Welcome to Simply Blossom, the podcast dedicated to life's transitional journey with your host, Kay Perkins.
Hello, I'm Kay Perkins, and welcome to Shut Up and Let Me Drive. Yes, today we are going to be focusing on the power of emotions. Emotions can cause you to abort your destiny. They can set you back. They can ultimately rewrite your God-given identity. Let me give you a visual. You have a cell phone. You drop it on the ground, and the screen cracks. Initially, it's one crack. But if you continue to use the phone without getting the screen repaired, eventually it'll begin to crack even more, ultimately turning into a spider web covering the whole surface of the phone to the point where you can't read the text or see the pictures any longer, making it impossible for the tool to fulfill its purpose, its God-given purpose in our cases. As we walk through life, looking through these shattered spiderweb glasses, it becomes normal until one day something happens, something clicks, or you just look in the mirror and you say, who is this person? How did I get this way? And how do I turn back? Or what do I do next? Usually there's two prominent ways that most people deal with these issues. Either they accept this as the new normal and move through life and never reaching their full potential, or they do spot fixes like the Michigan Road Commission. They grab scoops of gravel, stick it in there, pat it down, and pray that it keeps us through the winter. And most likely in the spring, the hole is back again, needing to be refilled. We never really initially want to fix the problem. At least most people don't. For me, I got to a place where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I knew that there was a better way, but I didn't know how to fix it. And so it brought me to my relationship with Christ. And through much prayer and building my relationship with Christ, I was able to unravel my true self from the lies that the world had taught me about me. I had to search and find the point of injury that ultimately set me on this path called life. So when I look back, in hindsight, it's really clear. Hindsight is truly 2020. I believe at the age of 2, my life started to change. You might say 2. You don't even remember being 2. But I think on some level, everybody remembers being 2, especially when there's a major event or tragedy or something that impacts you to the point of it changes your personality. For me, being a child of a teenage pregnancy, my father left at 2, and he left and started another family. And I believe at that point, the initial injury was made. The injury of rejection and abandonment. And it started me on a course of approval seeking throughout my whole life, wanting to be the best, get high scores, get all the education that I needed to prove that I was worth staying for, that I had value, and that God had truly called me and used me. I wanted to sway public opinion. But I don't know if you know this or not, but people are going to think about you whatever they want to think about you. It is nothing you can do, not any degree of education, not any change in your life that's going to change somebody's opinion of you unless they truly want to see you as differently. What I realized through this whole process was that the only person that needed to see that I was changed was God. His approval was enough. And so often we get stuck in approval seeking and trying to prove someone wrong, for whatever they said about you or whatever they felt about you. When at the end of the day, God has already validated you and given you purpose. in your life. He has anointed you and appointed you for a specific task. And it's up to you to find your way back to God and ultimately your purpose. So you might say that, okay, well, I go to church every week and I'm still having these issues. I went to church every week and I had issues too. But when the rubber met the road, it was me trying to create and cultivate a relationship with Christ, not just going to church. Often we get caught up in what's going on around us. We focus on tasks and titles and different kinds of jobs that we need to do in the church in order to keep it functioning. We also get sidetracked by leaders being human. We have this pedestal for our leaders and we think that, oh my gosh, like they're God-like. And the truth of the matter, we are human, they are human, they make mistakes. And when you put somebody on a pedestal, ultimately they fall off. And most of the time, when you're already in a bad place, a place of injury, it's a great excuse to not look at yourself. Another excuse to not take accountability for what's going on in your life. You can point fingers and blame. Well, the leader did this and so I'm wounded again. I was the queen of making excuses. I could make an excuse for anything, not to look at myself. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to evaluate your own behaviors and your actions, it doesn't matter what anybody does to you. You're the person that's in control of you, and you ultimately have to take control of who you are and who you want to be. You need to take ownership of your destiny. This is why I believe this is the perfect season for this conference on wholeness. There are a whole lot of people that are ready to move forward. They just don't know what direction to take. So many people focus on getting to the destination, but honestly, it's the journey. You have to get to a place where you're an acceptance of who you are, dealing with the past and the issues that plague you in order to move forward into your destiny, into your calling, into your purpose. Depending on what your denomination believes, there are various ways to get to this wholeness place. Some offer deliverance, which I caution a lot of people about deliverance because there needs to be an inner healing component first. You have to recognize the point of injury, heal that place before you try to remove what's plaguing you. Because often when you leave the house empty, tenants will move in and it'll be more than what you were dealing with before. So your vessel needs to be prepped and filled with the Holy Spirit before beginning a journey into any of these areas. I like to take another approach, understanding where you are and moving yourself towards the present by dealing with issues of the past, coming to a resolution in those matters. One of the techniques that we use in our process is life mapping. We discover a particular emotion or feeling that you have, and we regress down the timeline, looking at incidents and life events that particular feeling or emotion has stood out the most, as back as far as we can remember. This process helps the individual to understand and recognize the patterns in their life. When this happens, I behave this way. When this happens, it sets me off. Those key indicators let us know where we are and what's the cause of the issue, allowing us to put strategies into place to combat those initial reactions. We start to recognize where we are and what's going on, And so we can prepare ourselves to react a different way, different strategies. For example, this morning I was talking to my mom, and one of my relatives had commented on a post that I had made, and they are of a different faith than I am. And it upset my mom, and she told me not to respond to her. But I know me as a person, I've always been a person that had to respond and clear up any misconceptions. And instead of me acting in a way of a person being rejected, I acted in a way which I was explaining to her my belief. My belief is that the Old Testament, the Torah, and the Quran are of similar values, and the stories run in alignment with each other. However, where we different, we think that Jesus is a different person. So instead of looking at our differences, let's focus on the commonalities, because the Bible tells us that Abraham was going to be the father of many nations. And all of these nations were birthed out of one God. We serve one God. Now, how you want to get to that God, that's between you and God. But me, I'm going through Jesus, because he's proven that he works, and he teaches me new things every day, and he helps me. He guides me. It's not a form of fashion or a responsibility to pray. It's a relationship. And for me, the value of a relationship with God is bigger than any routine. And so I responded in that manner. Now, before, when I was controlled by the emotion of rejection, I would have lashed out. I might have said something that wasn't quite nice. But through understanding where my injury comes from, it helps me to relate to where she is, if that makes sense. The Bible clearly states that we will face trials and tribulations and tests and challenges. It's how we meet those that determine who we are. It helps us to adjust our perspective on things and the reality of how we are supposed to be if we're called by Christ's name. If we are truly followers of Christ, the fruits of our action should speak for themselves. We shouldn't have to go around with a sign on ourselves saying that we are followers of Jesus. They should know us by the fruit that we bear. Galatians chapter 5 is one of my favorite scriptures, especially in the Message version. It really deals with and encourages people to live in a certain way. If you are called in accordance with his purpose, and you say that you are a follower of the King, there's certain things that you should do. It counsels us to live freely and be motivated by the Spirit of God. It tells us and it warns us not to try to walk the line of both. Either you are or you are not in the Spirit. When you go down and you read, it gives you an inventory of what symptoms will manifest if you're not living by the Spirit. And I like to use this particular list as an self-evaluation. If you can check off more than, X amount of things on this list, you're not living in the Spirit. And not only does it tell you the manifestation of not living in the Spirit, it goes on to tell you what the benefits are of actually living in the Spirit and the fruits that manifest from the same. So I encourage you to take the time to read Galatians 5, specifically verses 16 through 24 in the Message version, because it makes it pretty darn clear where we are and, where we need to be or what we should be striving to be. I'm so appreciative of what God has done in my life, and I appreciate this time to spend with you and to share with you and to help you to ultimately get to the place that you want to be. It's difficult.